Empty hearts and neon lights, they're playing with my mind. Gotta get out of here tonight. Oh, I wanna run off and fly, and I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone, just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver, no more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar, bring me back to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. Get me out of now, to where we started out. La 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 la, oh, oh. Get me out of broken hearts and starting fights, turning truth to lies. Gotta get up, stop wasting time. Yeah, I wanna run off and fly, and I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone, just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh.
All right, all right, all right. Good morning. Happy Saturday to everybody. I'd like to welcome you to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. My name is 12 Gauge. Hope everybody's doing well this Saturday morning. Hope this finds you in great spirits and great mind. I decided to get on this morning to continue the Alex Murdaugh cast report data testimony part 2. Good morning, my friends. I want to continue this because it's interesting to me and it kind of relates to a lot of other cases that have either came or went. And I'd like to play a little bit more of this. I just ask that if you come into chat, please be classy. Please hold yourself up to an adult standard and refrain from name calling. And we have no real reason for fact checking in here about any other cases. We let people kind of go and find their own information and research. So we don't have any real need for that. So those are the only things that I hope that you understand when you come into chat, because this is a safe place for people to come and chat. So try to be classy and we'll all just get along just great. If you're new to the channel or you catch this on replay, I hope that you take a look around in the library, because there's plenty of stuff for you to go and look at. There's multiple videos, there's, commentary on a lot of different topics, cases, as well as substance abuse, addiction, life skills, things like that. So let me go ahead and get started, because this is a long trial. So let's see how far we can get today. Those of you in chat, thank you very much for being up this early with me. I appreciate you. If you have any questions along the way, be sure to ask them. I'll try to answer them the best that I can. I hope you all enjoy this. We did get to the 4149 part of the testimony where he was discussing the data points, and I hope he continues doing that. That way you can kind of catch up a little bit. If you don't understand what's going on, there is a part 1 in my library that you can go watch before you watch this one. Well, here we go.
Continue. May it please the court, Your Honor. All right, Special Agent Brzezowski, we just finished with the GM OnStar data. That was 524. And again, just to remind the jury, you prepared two timelines. One is 520, which is the big one, correct?
That's correct.
With a more expansive timeline relevant to June 7th, correct?
That's correct.
And surrounding days, correct? And then this one, which is 519, which is a condensed version of this that focuses just on the hours, evening hours of the day of the murders, correct?
That is correct.
All right. At this time, I'm going to publish 519 to the jury, and let's discuss it. All right, just real quick, I want to go through this opening page, and this is the condensed one, 519. Is that correct? Up on the screen?
That is correct.
All right, and has your name on it, correct?
That's correct.
All right, and then we have a reference guide right here, and if you would just explain just some of the various sources of information that have been admitted before this jury that you ultimately synthesize into this summary timeline.
Okay. What we have here is we're going to have cell bright extraction report. It's going to be for Paul MURDAUGH, which as you go through this timeline, PM is going to refer to Paul MURDAUGH. We're going to have AM, which is going to be Alex MURDAUGH's cell phone extraction, and then MM, which is going to be Maggie MURDAUGH. So anytime you see the abbreviations, that's what it's going to refer to. We have their cell phone extractions here. We also have the FBI telemetry report. We have the FBI CAS data. We also have different reports from the phones, like the Axiom reports. We have an ALPR report in here, which is actually probably not in the condensed one. That's going to be automated license plate reader data for Maggie MURDAUGH's Mercedes. We're also going to have some Snapchat data, and then data from Rogan Gibson, Paul MURDAUGH, Alex MURDAUGH, Maggie MURDAUGH, and Buster MURDAUgh's CDRs, which is the call data records from Verizon.
Okay, so some of this already is sounding familiar to this other case that is going on. So the Snapchat stuff, the automatic license reader. Interesting stuff. Let's go on.
Yeah, pause you real quick. So we have extractions.
Mm-hmm.
Tell the difference to the jury, and I don't mean to point out with the stick, between an extraction and then CDRs or SIL data records, please.
So the extraction is going to be what, like Britt Dove testified, what he actually extract out of the phone. And then the CDRs is going to be what Verizon testified, which is going to be their records of phone calls and text messages. So two separate data sources from two separate entities.
All right, and continue on, please, with the remainder of the data in your summary timeline.
We have referenced here a couple different like Knowledge C database. That's kind of like the Axiom database. It's just another database that was, records were provided to me from. We also have a PMPED building access log. And then in the big timeline, we have the 911 recordings. And then just want to point out a Dylan Hightower extraction. That would have been the first phone extraction of Alex's phone 2 days after the 7th.
All right.
And then we have the GM OnStar data.
Okay. All right, and then down at the bottom here, we have some color-coded things on the left of the screen and then a box on the right. So quickly explain to the jury what those reference points mean, please.
On the right of the screen, you're going to see the 2021 Suburban log file excerpt. Farkowski from FBI had that Excel sheet with all the different colors and everything. This is going to be a reference guide, so when you're going through this, what the colors actually mean on the data.
Right, and then give an example of what you mean by that.
So you're going to see kind of that reddish, pinkish color. That's going to mean that the infotainment center is booting up. So when we go through this timeline, you're going to see that data section highlighted with that color. That's what you'll know is happening with the data. If you see pink, it's going to be a propulsion. When you see blue, it means that it's either in and out of park. And that's kind of just how we're going to be reading it as we go along the timeline.
All right, and then these addresses have colors over here, and just, we don't have to go through every one, but the first one, that red one, what one is that?
4147 Moselle Road.
All right, so if we see that little red box with an arrow on it, that's Moselle on the map.
That is correct.
And then the green is what?
It's going to be
And for those of you that don't know what Moselle is, that is the residence of the Murdaughs. And that is the residence in which the murder took place.
Almeda, the Almeda property.
We'll talk about the others as we go through. All right. All right, let's start moving through it. Just give me 1 second.
And just think about your telephone, okay? Think about the calls that are received, the calls that are made, the texts that are sent, the texts that are received, all the things that are documented on your phone history, not only on your phone, but they're documented on a computer server where you get your service from. So, like I was saying last night in the long live that I did, there's always digital footprints or kind of physical or laboratory footprints that lead to certain things. It's very difficult these days to get away with the crime.
All right, all right, so this timeline, this condensed timeline begins roughly when?
Around 6 p.m.
All right, on what day?
June 7th, 2021.
All right, and let's start at 6:04, and I want to move through this expeditiously, and we'll stop and talk about some specific entries as we go through, okay? All right, and so starting there at 6:04, does Paul Murdaugh have any phone activity?
He does. He calls Will Loving. And as you can see in the parentheses, it's going to say PM extraction. That means it was pulled off of Paul Murdaugh's phone extraction, just for reference.
All right, and Will Loving, that's the individual that testified weeks ago.
That is correct.
And 6:08, what activity we see on Paul's phone?
He makes an outgoing call to Dad, which is identified as Alex Murdaugh. It shows answered, but 1 second long.
All right, and what was the source of that information?
That was from Paul Murdaugh's phone extraction. It does not show up in Alex Murdaugh's original logical dump or the second one from Britt Dove, but it does show up on his CDRs from Verizon. So that'd be the records that Verizon actually keeps for the phone.
All right, and can a user of a phone affect the CDRs that are with the Verizon phone company?
They cannot,
Or
no.
can the user affect what data remains on their phone?
Yes.
And frequently throughout this timeline, do we see instances in which there was a call logged on on Alec Murdaugh's CDRs, but was missing from his phone from the extraction?
That is correct.
Don't leave the witness.
All right. Can you explain any difference between the CDRs as it relates to Alec Murdaugh's phone and whether or not there's any missing call logs on the extraction from his phone?
As we go through this extraction, you're going to see that multiple instances, we're going to have calls showing on Alex Murdaugh's CDRs that we could not find on the logical extraction or the Britt Dove full extraction of Alex's phone. And that's going to be notated on the bottom if it was not in the extraction.
All right. It's 6:09:48. Do we have any communications on Maggie's phone?
This is going to be a iMessage from Maggie Murdaugh to Paul Murdaugh stating, "You okay getting little foot massage? Then I'm heading home." And that was obtained from Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh's phone extractions.
It's 6:10:01, going to the bottom of this page, that being page number 2. Is there another message from Maggie to Paul Murdaugh?
This is also going to be iMessage to Paul stating, "Love you, and Blanca cooked you dinner."
Moving on to page 3. And what does this reflect right here?
This is going to be from FBI agent Matt Wild. This is going to be from his report. This is for Paul Murdaugh. You're going to identify that on the right-hand corner where it says Paul. Just for reference, anytime you see a map, if you look on the right-hand corner, it's going to tell you whose map that is for.
All right. And just generally remind the jury what this map reflects, please.
This is just showing generally where the cell towers are located and where the area, whenever like a phone call or text message where it was pinging during that time for Paul.
And these little red things right here with the angles on it, what do those reflect?
That's going to be where the cell tower is and what angle the call would have originated or, take place from.
All right. And down at the bottom, what's the first time recorded for Paul's cell phone as it pings on these cell towers?
It's going to be 6/17/42.
And can you describe to the jury generally where these cell towers reflect Paul's phone is moving?
So it'd be at the Beaufort area down the right-hand side, moving up towards Moselle, which you can see in the far right corner, that little badge-looking red dot.
All right. Up here at the top center, what is that right there?
That's going to be an arc. It's just a distance arc.
But the red dot, what is that?
The red dot, that's going to be 4147 Moselle Road.
All right. And what times does Paul's phone ping off any cell tower near Moselle?
6:53 p.m., 7:05, and 7:30:05.
All right. And we see a 3 right there. Does that refer, or what does that 3 refer to as it relates to that cell tower location near Moselle?
It's just going to
See, my naiveness always thinks that, wherever you are, the closest cell tower is where your phone goes. But the more I learn about this stuff, and I'm no expert by no means, I'm a novice in all areas of the word. But I would always think that, the closest tower is where you're going to ping. But I've been by a tower before, driving by, and I've had little to no service at all. And even drop calls right next to a freaking tower. And I thought, well, the tower's right there. How the hell am I not getting any service or any of that? And it's probably because I wasn't pinging off that tower. I was already connected to another tower, which was, further down the road. And I guess that's what he's talking about here is the closeness of the tower to the location of the home. I could be wrong.
to show you what side of the cell tower it's on, what arc.
And what time does it first ping on sector 1 facing Moselle?
7:05:33 p.m.
All right, moving to continue on page 3. We have a time reference at 6:20:53. Can you explain to the jury what, if anything, that indicates?
We have Maggie MURDAUGH. She received a phone call from Proctor Marion. That's how it showed up in her phone. Through the phone number, it's actually Marion Proctor. That's just how it relays in the phone. It shows rejected.
All right, and after that, what, if any, communications were there?
Right after that, at 6:21:28, Maggie MURDAUGH sends a text message to Marion stating, "Can't talk, getting food massage. We'll call you back." That was from her phone extraction.
Moving on to 6:23, are there any communications with Maggie and Paul?
There are. Paul sends a message to his mom at 6:23:27 stating, "What did she make?" And then Maggie replies back shortly after saying, "Country fried steak and mac and cheese."
Below that, we have a orange and blue box. What does that represent?
So this is going to be from the FBI telemetry data from that Excel spreadsheet that's already into evidence. And this is just showing with that color coordination I talked about earlier. The orange is going to show a system startup. And from previous testimony, that could be, unlocking a car, locking it, getting in close range with the key fob, opening up the rear hatch, just something that makes, when you get in your car, you kind of hear that noise before you start it up, the telemetry. It's just inner workings, anything could really cause it.
Well, I'm asking you, going back to that map, the incident location at Moselle where Paul and Maggie were found murdered, what county is that in?
That's going to be Colleton County. And then if you look, we have the pink, which is going to kind of show propulsion, and then blue, which is going to show some kind of shift in the vehicle transmission.
All right, down to the bottom, 6:24. What is that?
6:24:02. That shows from the FBI report, telemetry report, that the Suburban shows a device connection.
That would be Alec Murdaugh's phone?
That'd be correct.
Okay. Moving on to 6:24.
I don't know about y'all in the chat, but it's like if you have this OnStar or you have any kind of, like I have a regular stereo that my phone connects to. So I guess every time it connects to my phone, it is recording that connection without, any knowledge of the person. So if you change a playlist or whatever, I wonder if that's what the connection to the phone is. That is wild to think that your car is keeping data on you.
4 p.m. Is there any data points as it relates to the defendant's Suburban?
It is. We have one at 6/24/18 around the PMPED law firm.
All right. And what time is that? No, 6:24.
6/24/18, correct.
All right. And that map there, is that a data point from the CAS data that you just explained to the jury?
That is correct.
Moving down, we have some various messages from some of the individuals. Is that right?
We do.
Okay.
We have Alex Murdaugh receiving a phone call from Jay Parker at 6:25. 6:27, Paul is sending a message to Britt saying maybe Saturday. He calls Robert Boyle shortly after. And then at 8:38 p.m., Rogan calls Marianne Dempsey.
And to your recollection, what is Marianne Dempsey to Rogan at this period of time?
I believe it's a girlfriend currently at the time.
All right. Moving on to page 5.
Mhm.
What does this map represent? And who is this from, this map?
This is going to be from Matt Wild from the FBI. This is directly from his report.
And what phone does this map reflect?
Top right, it's going to say Alex Murdaugh with associated cell phone.
All right. And then there's a box below that. Explain to the jury again what that box represents.
So the box below that's going to represent all the times that the pings were logged that Matt Wild actually put in the report.
And then the black circle with the angle in the middle, what is that?
That's going to show you the cell tower and then the kind of angle that the calls or texts would have been in.
And what property is in the sector of that cell tower?
4147 Moselle Road. It's
That-
identified by that red badge looking dot.
All right. On here, this box with the times, those are times of what again?
This would have been times of activity that would send to a cell tower that they would have data on.
In the 6 o'clock hour, what is the latest time period that you see Alex Murdaugh's phone reflecting activity?
6:52 p.m.
And then after that,
So if he was at home, he wouldn't not only be connected to Wi-Fi, he'd be connected to the tower as well, because it's my understanding, I could be wrong on this, it's my understanding that even though you're connected to Wi-Fi, you're still using your data that pings off a tower and brings the signal back. So that kind of gives the speed of the transmission. Hey, this case is new to me. I don't have a lot of information on it, so I'm doing the best I can. So don't kill the messenger. If you in chat know anything about the Wi-Fi or the data transmission, feel free to type it in the chat. Help a brother out.
what's the next time period that you see reflecting activity?
The next time showing on the map is going to be 9:04:24 p.m.
Does the defendant's cell phone reflect any activity between 6:52 and 9:04?
Between 6:52 and 9:04, there's no activity reflected.
At least on the cell pinging.
That is correct.
All right, at 6:40:01, what activity, if any, is reflected?
Paul calls, it's going to show up as PA in the extraction, which is Alex Murdaugh based on the phone number. It shows it was answered. It was 2 minutes and 29 seconds long. This call also does not show up in the phone extractions for Alex Murdaugh, just on his CDRs.
It was in the defendant's CDRs?
That is correct.
All right.
And it was also in Paul's phone. It shows the phone call.
6:42, and what if anything's reflected?
We have a Suburban device connection to iPhone from the FBI report at 6:42:48, and at 6:42:54, we show the Suburban arrives at 4147 Moselle Road based on the GM OnStar data.
All right, and going on to page 6, is that your CAS map reflecting that data point you just described?
That is correct. It's going to be the 6:42:54 data point.
And what happens at that moment?
That's when Alex Murdaugh is going to arrive back from the PUP and PMPED law firm from work that day.
All right, move.
See, on the first part, he's talking about the data points. And in this one, he shows the map. And as you could see very briefly, those little dots, that is part of the cast report. See, I thought the cast report was just on the cell data, where it was talking about from the tower to the cell phone. Well, this is obviously from the car to the car GPS and the other cell phone data as well. So this gives the data points of the vehicle moving, or even the person moving, or whether they're sending text messages, phone calls, receiving text messages. So it's very, very precise. Good grief. It's kind of scary, to be honest, because it makes me want to turn my cell phone off right now, and Wi-Fi and everything else.
Moving on, 6:43:50. What, if any, activity do you see?
It shows that Maggie Murdaugh's phone had a missed call from PA, which is Alex Murdaugh. It shows missed, but also it shows up in Alex Murdaugh's CDRs, but does not show up in either one of the phone extractions.
All right. And moving on, we have a couple of the orange and white boxes. Tell the jury again what those reflect.
So these are just going to reflect some kind of system boot up. Doesn't mean the car moved or did anything. It just means that door was opened. It just something triggered the car to kind of do a little internal boot up from previous testimony.
At 6:53:44, what, if any, activity do you see?
Paul Murdaugh calls John Marvin. It shows 1 minute and 42 seconds long, and that's based off of Paul's phone extraction.
So your understanding, when you see those times of the call lengths, does that also include connection time as well?
It does. Based on previous testimony from Verizon, that could include how long it takes to get the actual network connected.
All right. And then at the 7 o'clock hour, what, if any, communications are on Paul's phone?
So Paul sends a text message to Claude CB Rowe saying, "Are you coming tomorrow?" And then shortly after, he sends another text saying, "Sunflowers died. We need to plow them under ASAP." And that was based off his phone extraction.
Moving on now to page 7. Do we have some activity at 7:02:29?
We do. Maggie Murdaugh calls Alex Murdaugh. It shows 2 seconds. And this also does not show on Alex Murdaugh's extraction. It shows on the CDRs. And it also shows on Maggie's phone that Maggie called Alex, but does not show on Alex's phone that call was there.
Missing from his phone, though, correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Missing in the call log of the phone.
All right, 7:03 to 7:11. What if
Look at that, 7:03 to 7:11. It showed Alex Murdaugh's iPhone, 165 steps traveled. So even your steps are monitored. Like your phone is, of course, my phone has it, my watch has it. I mean, there's so many things that are tracking your blood pressure, your elevation. I mean, if he had an iPhone, think about this. At the time of the crime, if his iPhone was on, it would have even signaled a blood pressure rise, stress level, out the roof. I mean, the EKG maybe on the iPhone watch. I mean, it doesn't stop. We carry around computers that are plugged into us, so to speak, monitoring everything about us.
anything is reflected on Alex's phone?
His phone's showing approximately 165 steps taken during that time frame.
And then what happens at 7:04?
704, through the catch data database, it shows that Paul Murdaugh is at the residence of 147 Moselle Road.
Does Maggie's phone reflect the activity as we move on to the 7:04 time period?
Her phone showed that between 7:04 and 8:17, her phone was, they showed a Bluetooth connection to MBUX 95224, which is her Mercedes-Benz.
And so anytime we see MBUX 95224, what, if anything, does that represent?
That's going to reflect her Mercedes-Benz.
MB for Mercedes-Benz?
That is correct.
All right. Moving on, at 7:05, does Maggie call anyone?
She does. She calls Marion at 7:05:13. It shows answered 7 seconds.
At 7:05:55, is there any reflection of the communication between Alec and Maggie Murdaugh?
There is Alex sends a message to, in his phone, it's Maggie May, stating, Paul said you were getting a petty. Call when you done. That's from the Alex, that's from the extraction.
All right. Moving on, do we have any communications between Maggie and Paul during this time period?
At 7:05:32, we have Maggie calling Paul. It shows answered 1 minute and 31 seconds.
And then does Maggie attempt to call Marion again?
That is correct.
And I'm sorry, that would be at the bottom of the screen.
Yep, that'd be the 7:07:49. Maggie Murdaugh calls Marion. And when it says Marion, it's Marion Proctor.
All right, moving on to page 8, we have another map. Can you generally explain what this represents to the jury, please?
So in the top right-hand corner, we have Maggie Murdaugh with associated phone number. We have 2 points, 4147 Moselle Road in the red, and the green's going to be the Almeda property. When you're looking at this map, number 1's going to be closer to Charleston, and it's working its way. Maggie is working her way towards Moselle in this map.
All right, and the first time period you see on dot number, this numbered 1.
It's going to be 7:07:49
And
p.m.
the latest time period you see on the dot that's numbered 5.
That is correct. That's going to be in the Walterboro area. It's going to be 7:50:20.
See, he detailed it down to the second. I mean, and it also showed the longitudinal and latitudinal coordinates. It showed the time, and even on some of the part 1, it even showed the miles per hour the vehicle was traveling. So it is very precise. I mean, it, like what you just heard right there, it even showed that they plugged in an iPhone. Like, I would have never thought that. Every time you plug in your phone, it registers on that thing. I mean, it's like, whoa, that is mind blowing right there. I would have never thought about that.
7:50:20 is going to be the latest dot, and that's in the Walterboro area.
All right, moving on.
Does he look guilty?
Looking down at 7:09:43, what if any activity do we see on Maggie's phone?
Maggie calls her mom. It shows answered 8 minutes and 17 seconds long.
Would that be Ms. Brandstatter?
That is correct.
We have an orange box. Tell the jury that quickly, please.
So that's just showing a system boot up. Could have been getting close to the Suburban, unlocking it, locking it, opening up a door, or it could just be some kind of internal components based on previous testimony from the FBI.
After that, we have 2 entries. Can you tell the jury what those 2 entries are, the time periods, and what they represent, please?
Yep. So the next 2 entries is going to be 7:14:13 to 7:22:19. It's going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone showing approximately 208 steps traveled during that time period. And the one below it's going to be 7:15:35 to 7:21:52. This is going to be from Alex's phone, showing that approximately 200 steps were taken during that time frame. So we have 208 steps taken from Paul during his time frame, and then Alex is around 200 steps traveled.
And both those time periods for those steps for Alec and Paul, are those generally roughly the same?
Generally the same.
Consistent?
That's correct.
7:18:44, what if any activity do you see?
Alex Murdaugh sends a text message to CB Rowe saying, "Call me, please."
Going now to page 9. At the top, those 2 entries, again, explain those 2 entries to the jury.
So the first entry is going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone from 7:25:03 to 7:34:47, and it's showing 139 steps taken during that time period. This is approximate. 7:28:35 to 7:37:11 is going to be Alex Murdaugh's iPhone, showing approximately 47 steps traveled during that time period.
All right, 7:30 p.m., we have another data point indicating Maggie's trip home to Moselle.
That is correct.
Let me answer some of these questions. This is the original trial, and he was found guilty. The jury found him guilty. But the part that's going to probably give him another trial is it went all the way to the Supreme Court because the court clerk supposedly was rushing the jury to get to a deliberation. And by that, it kind of infringed on his rights to a fair trial. So it went up to the Supreme Court, and they found new evidence that that could have infringed his right on a fair trial because one of the jurors felt rushed in getting the verdict come to. So what I'm doing right here, I thought this was interesting because it showed the cast report. It showed how they got to him, and he was found guilty because what supposedly happened is Maggie and Paul were lured out to the dog kennels, and that's where the murders took place. They were shot with a 20 gauge shotgun, I think, and you know, and that's where all this information's leading up to. That's where the timeline's leading up to is showing you precisely how they tracked him. And I haven't watched this all the way through, so I don't know how it ends up at the end, but I do know that he was found guilty. And somebody asked about the motive. What happened with Alex Murdaugh is he was embezzling money out of his law firm, and I guess he was starting to feel the pressure. His son had a case against him. Um, he wrecked a boat. Somebody died. This family had a lot of money. They had a lot of power in the community, and I believe that it was all just falling down around them. And instead of rectifying the situations, oh, they also had a maid or a housekeeper that died as well. So there was a lot of deaths concerning this family. So um, I don't know if the pressure of that got to him and he just started eliminating suspects. I really don't know. Like I said, I'm very new to this case, so I think it's interesting, but it's sad. Yeah, Teresa said he got addicted to pills, so I didn't know that part. So that could have been the motive. He could have been out of his mind when he did this crime. Who knows? But let's continue on, guys. Good morning, Christy, and good morning, everybody who haven't called your name out. Let me do a quick call out. Echoes, Teresa, Christy, Rondi, Jeff H. And there's somebody else I saw in here. Oh, that guy 12 gauge is in here. Ray, thank you for being here. Justice. You guys are excuse me, are asking some great questions. And if I don't get to your question right away, if you get just put a star next to your question, that way I can see it right off the bat, okay? And Ray says his financial crimes were a big part. So yeah, I mean, all this adds up to eventual, some people they can't handle the stressors of all the secrets and all the things that they've done in their lives, and instead of dealing with them, sometimes they snap and they do unhealthy things.
All right, we got another map. Tell the jury what this one is, please.
This map's just showing that, her phone was pinging. It's starting at 7:30.
Whose phone is this?
This is going to be Paul Murdaugh. It's going to be the right-hand corner. So it's going to say Paul Murdaugh with the phone number on top. This is just showing where his phone was pinging on June 7, 2021, starting at 7:30 and then all the way to 8:40 p.m.
All right, we see two cell towers there and then some arcs. Where do those arcs intersect?
The arcs intersect close to the property at Moselle Road.
And if you would, just tell the jury the earliest time that's reflected here and the latest time that's reflected here.
The earliest time reflected is going to be 7:30:05, And the latest time reflected is going to be 7:40:21 p.m. on June 7, 2021.
So Paul's phone is at the Moselle location according to this data.
That is correct.
All right. Bottom of page 9. Do we have any communications between Maggie and Marion Proctor?
We do.
Thank you so much. Like I was saying, in the other cases that I had covered, that I had spoke about in part one, like the Delphi, the Gilgo Beach, the Stephen Stearns case, and the Idaho. Think about the all the people in that house whose phones probably had the data dump. So all their text messages, all their phone calls coming in and going out were verified somehow, some way, based on this timeline. And that's probably how they got the timeline, a lot of it. So to say that these people were involved or they had some kind of collusion going on, that kind of, this is going to be able to tell you, no, they did not. Because if they did, you don't think they would have been arrested as a suspect? So I'm just thinking that way. I'm not saying that I know everything, but they would have had their phones data dumped. Not only the suspect, but everybody in the house. They would have been able to see what text messages were sent, what type of text messages were sent. Like in this one, the iPhone was even being able to tell you what time the freaking iPhone was plugged into the charger in the car. So, I mean, if your iPhone is able to capture that type of information, what other phones are able to do that as well? It's just interesting to me. I know that I would never think of any of this. If I was ever to snap and do something crazy, that would be the last thing on my mind. My phone's gonna tell on me. My car is gonna tell on me. My watch is gonna tell on me. That is it's a trip to me. I'm tripping out right now.
At 7:31:13 p.m. We show a call from Maggie to Marion at 7:39, which is the length of the call.
7 minutes and 39 seconds.
That's correct.
Does that include connection time as well?
It does.
Do we have any step data on Paul's phone in the time period around this time?
Paul's phone shows between 7:35:10 and 7:41:43. It shows roughly around 171 steps traveled during that time frame.
7:37 and 7:38. Do we see any activity on Paul's phone with some of his friends?
Yeah, Paul receives a Snapchat message from Michelle Beck stating, BC, I have short-term memory loss. And that was based off his phone extraction. And then Paul Murdaugh receives an iMessage from Megan Kimbrell stating, Paul.
Okay. All right, moving now to page 10. Going to 7:39:55. Can you tell the jury what that data point reflects on your summary timeline?
So from earlier testimony, you've seen this this video. This is just a thumbnail picture, and this is when it's showing it was created in Paul Murdaugh's phone. And we have a little screenshot of the creation time, It's going to show 7:39:55 is when this thumbnail was created in Paul's phone.
And remind the jury what video that is. I'll say we got a thumbnail there, but
Yep.
what video is that?
This is going to be that Snapchat video that was sent to a few friends of the tree. You have Alex Murdaugh on the tree that's leaning over.
All right. And again, this is when that video.
Good grief. I'm muting it because of the dog. But think about this picture was taken on Snapchat and it was sent to his friends. So think about how many people take pictures of you without you even knowing it, especially if it's a malicious thing. And we don't know that that picture's in their phone. It just wild to me. Not that this is the first time that I'm thinking about any kind of cell stuff like this, because I've thought about it, but I've never put it in context on, trying to solve a crime. So you think the dad thought, well, my son just took a picture of me, so he's gonna have me here in the location of where they're gonna be shot eventually or where they're gonna pass away. I bet he didn't. Wow.
At least the timestamp was its creation.
That's correct, based on previous testimony, yes.
All right. 7:41 to 7:48. What, if anything, is reflected on Alex's phone?
We show that 29 steps were traveled on his phone, approximately between 7:41 and 7:48.
All right. And just talked about the Snapchat video. Looking at this map, whose phone is this? And explain these data points to the jury, if you would, please. Or whose phone is this first, if you would, please?
So this is going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone, and below it, it's going to be his iPhone location data. So this is not going to be Verizon location. This is going to be location data directly off of his phone.
So this is GPS data that's more specific.
That is correct.
All right. And we see a number of dots up here. What is this area up here generally sort of in the center of this image?
That's going to be the kennel area, and then there's that little house,
The cabin.
the cabin.
All right. And what time periods in that upper box do we see GPS data on Paul's phone up there at the kennel cabin area?
We're seeing between 7:45 and 7:54 is location data for that
Is
area.
7:54 or 7:56?
7:56, sorry, it's kind of hard to see.
All right. And then we have two data points at the bottom.
Mhm.
Is that where is generally that on the property?
That's going to be what previous testimony talked about, like a dove field. It's going to be past the main house, closer to the Godly Farm roadside. And that's going to be a data point at 8 and 42 seconds and 8 and 44 seconds.
8 p.m.?
That's correct, 8 p.m., June 7th.
Oh, darn it. And then down at the bottom of page 10, is there any step data on Paul's phone?
There is, it shows approximately 89 steps traveled
And
during
what time periods?
7:45 p.m. to 7:55.
Moving on to page 11, we have a map. Tell the jury whose phone that is and what that data point is, please.
So this is going to be Maggie Murdaugh's phone. This is going to be Verizon location data. And what we see here is the tower and then the arc of the tower. This is going to be in the Walterboro area. The time is 7:50:03 p.m.
All right, and moving down, we're starting to see some references, and there's a little battery symbol on the side. What does that represent?
So that's going to represent battery life. So right here, this is going to be at 7:52:28. It's going to show Paul Murdaugh's iPhone battery at 7%.
And in your review generally of Paul's cell phone data, was it generally consistent for him to continue to use his phone even if he had a low battery life on it?
That's correct.
And is that also consistent with the testimony from David Grubbs from yesterday, the day before?
Previous testimony, yes.
All right, below that, 7:55 time period, we have two entries. Can you explain those two entries to the jury and how they relate to each other, if anything?
So 7:55:44 to 8:05:28, we have Paul Murdaugh's iPhone showing approximately 262 steps traveled. And a close time frame from 7:55:32 to 8:05:07, we show Alex's iPhone traveling approximately 270 steps during that time period.
All right. And then at 7.
Again. So you're asking the importance of the steps. Think about this in the crime lab that I did last night. Whenever you're measuring a crime scene, these steps are going to be important because they tell how far away you were or how close you were to the victim. So they're going to be able to differentiate the steps around the victim. So this is how many steps you could have taken away from the victim. This is how many steps you were to the victim, the trajectory of the shotgun blast, all that stuff. I mean, it's very scientific. It's very thorough. And I'm not saying one way or the other. I mean, because like I said, I don't know anything about this crime very well. I have, done some reference points, but nothing really substantial to be able to. Yeah, that too. 360 Life app. If they had that on their phones as well, I mean, that could have shown a lot of stuff. Let me continue on.
56. What is reflected as it relates to that Snapchat video?
This is when the Snapchat video referencing Alex Murdaugh would have been sent through Paul's Snapchat account to his friends based on previous testimony.
And it was created, you already testified to this, but it was created when?
I believe 7:39:55.
And it was sent out to his friends when?
At 7:56 p.m.
Moving on to page 12 at 7:57, does one of his friends respond?
Yes, he receives a Snapchat message from Brian Murdaugh
Oops, sorry.
stating, "Damn, man, needs some straps. Oh, it."
All right. Now we're moving into the 8 p.m. hour on June 7th, 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. We have a map here. First of all, in the right corner, whose phone is this?
This is going to be Paul Murdaugh's phone. This is going to be his iPhone location data.
And starting up at the, it's sort of the top center, more to the right. Where does that location generally?
That's going to be the little cabin on the property.
All right. And what is the data point? What's the time on that data point up there?
I believe it says 8:06:20 p.m.
All right. And then we see the dots sort of moving down. And in what direction are they generally moving?
That's moving towards the main house on the property.
All right. And then down at the bottom of the screen, at what time do we see that data point stop at the main residence?
8:14.
What's the first data point?
8:08:45 and then 8:14.
Paul's at the main
PM.
residence at what time? First?
8:08:45 p.m.
All right. And just on page 13, we have some earlier data points. Is this map kind of out of order just a little bit?
It is. So this is just going to be earlier data points at 8:05:14.
Okay, Chad, I've almost reached an hour, and I did an hour on part one. I'd like to see where y'all are at as far as interest wise. If you could press a one of those of you that are in here that would like me to continue for a little longer, that'd be really helpful because I don't want to bore you with anything longer than an hour, you know. So if you're interested and you're invested in what I'm showing, press a one for me to continue. This StreamYard really does have a time lag, or it has like YouTube has a time lag or something. I don't know. Okay, so we got a majority of one, so I will continue on. Thank you so much for responding. Let's continue on.
And 804.45 just showing some location data from his iPhone.
All right. So that one should have gone before this one, the one at the bottom of page 12,
That is correct.
which reflects Paul again getting back to the main residence at what time?
8:08:45 p.m.
Looking below, again on page 13, do we see two entries for Paul and Alex's phone? And if so, please explain to the jury what they are.
So for Alex's phone, we show between 8:05 and 8:09 that his phone approximately took 54 steps traveled during that time period. And then for Paul, we show 8:05:46 to 8:15:24. We show approximately 303 steps traveled during that time period.
Moving on to page 14, do we see that same map again of Paul's phone reflecting him arriving at the residence at 8:08?
8:08:45, correct.
And then still pinging there at what time, at the bottom time?
8:14 p.m.
All right. Again, at 8:07, what, if anything, do we see?
At 8:07:20, we see that Paul is sending Snapchats to a few friends. That's based off his Snapchat records.
All right, next entry is in purple, and then there's kind of a line going from that. Explain what that purple reference, that time period references, and then the line that travels down the side of your timeline. Explain to the jury what that's going to represent generally to the various phones as we go forward.
As we go forward, anytime you see purple, that's going to represent Maggie Murdaugh's phone. And for this instant, it's going to represent on the left-hand side, the line going down. Anytime you see a line next to something, that means whatever it says on the left. So if it says device locked, it means the device was locked during those other time periods. So this is going to show from 8:11:08 to 8:31:15 that Maggie's iPhone was locked. And as we move down, you can see it continue to the next page. That means during those times it's locked.
All right, so we'll see multiple of those as you go forward, just explaining time periods where various devices were locked or other things were going on.
That is correct.
All right. Moving on to page 15, we have a map. Explain to the jury whose phone this is and what it represents.
So this is going to be for CB Row, and this is a overview map. You can see Augusta, North Augusta area, and it's showing the sector and the tower that it's pinging off of at 7:13:15 in the North Augusta area.
You say 7:13 or 8:13?
I'm sorry, 8:13:15.
All right. So CB Rowe's phone is pinging over here, way over here in Augusta. Is that right?
That is correct.
So if you don't understand, Maggie is the mother. She's the one that was murdered. Maggie and Paul are the ones that were murdered. So her phone is locked at this period of time. And it's still, as you can see the purple, you can still see the purple dots, even though it's locked. And I think that's really like that's interesting to me.
Correct.
All right, moving to the next map. Whose phone is this? If you could tell whose phone this is, and then what data points you see on this particular map.
So this is going to be Paul Murdaugh's iPhone location data. So it's going to be separate from like Verizon location data. And this is showing at the area of the main house, bottom left. And the data starts at 8:14 and goes all the way to 8:35:07.
8:35. Paul's phone is located where?
At the main house, 4147 Moselle Road.
And down at the bottom of page 15, do we have any step reference for Paul?
We do from 8:15:55 to 8:21:45. We're showing approximately 140 steps traveled.
Paul arrived back at the residence about 8:08, you testified, is that correct?
That is correct.
At 8:17 and 14 seconds, what, if anything, do you see on Maggie's phone?
So it's highlighted purple in reference to Maggie. It's going to show that her phone ended the connection to the Mercedes-Benz, which is the MBUX 95224. It shows that it's unplugged.
And what does that mean? What does that reference mean as it relates to Maggie's phone and the Mercedes she was driving?
It means that she unplugged her phone
From that vehicle?
From that vehicle.
And the data generally reflects that she's at the residence at that point?
That is correct.
Paul 808, Maggie 817.
That is correct.
Alex's last data point on his phone was 6:52, right?
That is correct, based on the Verizon records.
We have at 8:17:44 p.m., do we have a battery reference for Paul?
We do. It shows that his iPhone was at 4% battery life at that time.
And as we continue forward, do we see Paul continue to use his phone?
We do.
At 8:17 to 8:18, what, if anything, do we see on Maggie's phone?
We're showing approximately 38 steps taken during that time frame.
All right, and that would be after her phone disconnects from the Mercedes.
That's correct.
8:19 p.m., what do we see on Paul's phone?
We see that he connects to a PRTC Wi-Fi and that he receives a Snapchat message from Ansley Wilson.
I believe that all this is so interesting because, as you've seen in the Idaho 4 cases, when people do the 3D walkthroughs and things like that, I would see them plugging all this information into a computer 3D animation type thing, and could actually show the steps. It could actually show where the individual was at the time of these pings and all this information, where you could get a visual of it. And I'm sure if they haven't, eventually they might do that, which would be interesting to see this going on as it happened. And it's cool to me to think that they have the technology to be able to even track an individual as they're doing their daily routine, like 37 steps. So she went 37 steps west. So they're going to show her going 37 steps west, whether it's in the house, whether it's in a driveway. What do y'all think?
Stating he got the magic touch. He also sends another outgoing text message or Snapchat message.
All right. Now, PRTC, his phone connects to PRTC. What is PRTC?
So PRTC is going to be the local internet telephone provider for this area. So it's just showing a Wi-Fi connection.
And was PRTC, to your knowledge, providing services to Moselle Road?
They were providing services to the main house and then the cabin.
All right, going below that, we have a series of communications. And whose communications are these going sort of back and forth, a series of communications?
This is going to be Paul Murdaugh's series of communications.
All right. And I'm not going to read each one or have you read each one, but are these generally communications going back and forth with his friends?
That is correct.
And on this page, they start about what time and continue through about what time?
Start around 8:20 23 and go all the way to 8:29.
Well,
I think we keep on going down. Yeah, about 8:30. It's about 8:23 to 8:30.
all right, at 8:30 to 8:33 p.m., what, if anything, do we see on Maggie's phone?
We're showing that her phone took approximately 42 steps traveled during that time period.
All right. And that starts at what time that Maggie's phone starts reflecting steps?
8:30 p.m.
About 8:30. Going on to the next page, page 17. Going back just real quick on page 16, generally that series of communications with Paul and his friends, is he generally responding fairly quickly to the communications back and forth?
He is either, it's their Snapchat and iMessages. He's responding and using those two applications very frequently.
Now we're at the top of page 17 at 8:31 p.m. Describe to the jury generally what this data entry is.
So this is going to be a group message from John Marvin Murdaugh. He's talking about how they're planning to go visit their dad tomorrow and asking if anyone else is going. Listed here, everyone that's in that group message.
And that's generally a number of family members.
That is correct.
And the dad they're referring to is who?
It's going to be Alex's dad.
Mr. Randolph.
That is correct.
And based on your knowledge and investigation, he had a turn for the worst health-wise around this time?
That is correct.
All right, well, let's talk about that very quickly. That did the defendant receive, or did his phone receive that text?
His phone and Maggie's phone both received the text message.
And did the defendant ever read that text, according to the phone at least?
According to the phone, it was not read until the following day, 6/8/21 at 1:44:49 p.m.
And that text came in at what time?
8:31 on the dot.
And did Maggie read that text?
This agent knows his stuff, man. He is right on point with his stuff. And it's interesting that, this is such a timeline that's broken down almost minute to minute. It's blowing my mind right now. I don't know about y'all.
Right away, at least according to the phone, her phone.
She did not.
All right. And when did her phone finally read that text?
Around 8:49:26.
What time?
8:49:26 is when Maggie read that text.
8:49.
8:49.
At 8:31, what, if any, entry do we see?
So at the 8:31:15, Maggie Murdaugh's phone unlocks and does orientation changes. And then at 8:31:18 to 8:49:26, we show that her phone was locked.
At 8:31, there's an orientation change. Does the data reflect that her phone was unlocked at that period of time?
That is correct.
All right. And then what happens after that at 8:31 and 18 seconds?
Her device is locked until 8:49:26.
8:49:26, is that correct?
8:49:26.
All right. At 8:32:25, we have an entry in green and then a line going down. Can you explain to the jury those time periods and what, if any, significance they have?
So green is going to reflect Paul Murdaugh. Anytime you see green, it's going to be Paul, and purple is going to be Maggie. That's reflecting that his iPhone moved approximately 283 steps during that time period. So on the left-hand side, as we go down, and you're going to see other data entry points. If you see the green next to it, that means that those steps are being traveled during that time frame.
And now we have a map. Whose phone is that?
This is also going to be Paul Murdaugh's, and this is going to be his iPhone location data.
All right. And where is that iPhone location data located?
That's going to be at the kennel. kennel area of the property.
All right. And tell me the time periods that he is at the kennels at this point in time.
At this point in time, he's at the kennels at 8:38:07 p.m., 8:44:53, 8:44:55, and 8:44:56.
What happens at 8:40 while Paul's phone is at the kennels?
Paul calls Rogan Gibson. It shows answered for 4 minutes and 14 seconds.
Starting at what time?
8:40:20.
And if you have about a 4-minute call, what time does that end?
8:44.
At 8:44:34, what, if anything, does Paul's phone indicate?
So at 8:44:34, Paul Murdaugh initiates a FaceTime video call with Rogan Gibson. It shows answered 11 seconds long. And that's based off of Paul and Rogan's information.
And then at 8:40.
So at 8:44, it says video extracted through Paul's iPhone at the kennels has Alex in the background talking along with Maggie. So it's my understanding that he was denying that he was even at the kennels during that time. But this FaceTime has him in the background talking with the mom as well. So they're all three out there right now.
$44.55. What does it reflect on Paul's phone?
This is when this video was extracted and created through Paul's phone, which shows Alex, Maggie, and, well, you can hear Alex, Maggie, and Paul in the background.
That's the kennel video at
That's
8:44.
That's a kennel video that's been in previous testimony, correct?
Following below that, at 8:47 and 8:48, does Paul continue to communicate with his phone?
He does. He uses the iMessage feature in his phone to send a couple messages to Megan Kimbrell. And it looks like it's based off of movie recommendations.
Are those communications for 10 minutes or just for a couple of minutes or a minute or so?
A minute or so.
Going to the top of page 19.
Mhm.
What time do we see there?
8:48:29.
All right. And what's going on? What's Paul doing?
He's receiving a message from Megan, and we have some backlight on data at 8:48:56.
All right. And the next entry, tell me the time periods for that entry.
8:48:58 to 8:49:01.
All right. And what happens there?
Paul Murdaugh's phone that's the last time that it was unlocked,
Ever?
ever. 8:49:01.
And the next activity that we'll see on Paul's phone occurred when?
We have a backlight off from 8:49 to,
Going back to 8:48 to 8:49:01, you said that was when Paul's phone was last unlocked?
that is correct.
And continue on with that data entry, what does it indicate? What's the next time ever that Paul's phone shows any activity?
10:18. That's when,
And the 8:48 to 8:49
oh,
PM?
I'm sorry, next activity notification is going to be the Rogan Gibson call at 9:58:35. That's the next time that any activity or notification shows up on his phone.
Looking at this entry with the green line on the right side, what are those time periods there and what do they represent starting at 8:49:01?
Starting at 8:49:01 to 10:34:23, Paul's phone shows device locked.
Was it ever open again until it died at 10:34:23?
It was not.
8:49:01 is the last time before that Paul had ever unlocked his phone.
That is correct.
Just a few seconds later, does Maggie's phone reflect any activity?
It does. 8:49:26, approximately 26 seconds later, her phone unlocks for a text message notification, and it implements an orientation change.
And was that text message about Mr. Randolph that you earlier referred to?
That is correct, that group message. I believe it was in response to Lynn.
And at 8:49:31, here in red, what happens to Maggie's phone? Just seconds later.
Maggie Murdaugh's phone locks forever
Forever. Until when?
until it's recovered the next day at 1:10 p.m.
On June 8th.
on June 8th by law enforcement.
Do both Maggie and Paul's phone lock forever around 8:49?
They do.
At 8:49:35, does Paul's phone receive a text from anyone?
It does. It received a text from Brogan Gibson.
And what does that text say?
See if you can get a good picture of it. Mary Ann, referring to his girlfriend, wants to send it to a girl. We know that's a vet. Tell him to sit and stay, and he shouldn't move around too much. That shows unread.
You never read that.
Never read it.
According to the investigation, is that the conversation that Paul and Rogan were actively engaged in starting at 8:40?
That is correct.
The kennel video was at what time?
8:44.
And then the defendant repeatedly denied that he was ever at those kennels with the victims just minutes before their phones go silent forever.
Objection.
Basis for the objection.
Leading. It's leading.
No legal witness. Restate the question.
Did the defendant repeatedly deny ever being at the kennels at that
Yes.
time period?
Yes, he did. Various interviews with law enforcement.
And was that kennel video, what time was that kennel video?
8:44.
And what time did Paul and Maggie's phones go silent forever?
Eight.
Answered it several times.
Objection is overruled.
8:49 is when their phones went silent forever.
So if you've never been in a court, this is what the court hearing gonna be, I bet, in the Idaho 4. It should be just as dramatic as this. But this guy is really good. This lawyer is really good. Yes, they can see if the text was read, and that text wasn't read. So it almost points to the murders happening around 8:49-ish. This is intense.
At 8:53, do we see any activity on Maggie's phone?
We do. At this time, as you can see to the right, her phone is locked, but we do see that 59 steps were traveled over the period of 8:53 to 8:55.
And that just means the phone was moving, correct?
That is correct.
Do we see some orientation changes as well?
We do. Between 8:53:08 and 8:55:32, we see various orientation changes, which would indicate someone has the phone based on previous testimony.
Moving on to page 20. At the top, we have 855, and we have a reference to a data point. Can you explain that to the jury, whose phone that is, and just generally what that is based on information gathered in the investigation?
85548.
85548, yes, sir.
That's just a internal application running in the background for Maggie Murdaugh's phone. It's just the iPhones will take a random snapshot of what's going on in the phone. So that's just reflecting that there was some, behind the scenes stuff happening in her phone. It's not saying that someone was actively using it.
Hold on for me just real quick.
I'm glad they got that shot of him because I was about to make a point about how he's looking. Look at him during this trial. Like he had just dissociated from his body almost. It looks like, I don't know for a fact, but he's out there, right? And it kind of looks like another defendant we see in other court hearings sometimes. And, it's like you dissociate from what you're hearing because you don't want to have any kind of emotional reaction to what's being stated against you.
Right here at the bottom of page 13, we have a reference to step data on Alex's phone.
That's correct.
And what are those time periods?
8:05:35 to 8:09:52. It's showing 54 steps traveled.
All right. We'll turn into page 20. What suddenly happens to Alex's phone around 9:02?
Pretty much wakes up
And what data point is reflected?
from 9:02:18 p.m. to 9:06:47. It shows 283 steps traveled.
And how long? How many minutes roughly?
5 minutes, 5-6 minutes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 521 in your testimony and see if you recognize that.
I do.
And tell me what that is, please.
This is going to be a PACE spreadsheet for Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh that I created.
Your Honor, this time I would offer States 521 into evidence.
No objection.
Admit it.
Can I have the element, please? And General, if I could have the screen. All right, tell the jury real quick as we look at this exhibit just admitted, just generally we have at the top, tell them quickly what this is and what these columns represent. Explain this chart if you would.
First column entry, that's just going to be from all the various entries from the phone data. We have a start time, we have a end time, we have the time elapsed in between the estimated amount of steps, and then we have a steps per minute calculation, which is going to be the far right.
And the steps, those are the data entries in this timeline that you've been testifying to as reflected from the phone data.
That is correct.
And then the last column is just a simple calculation of steps based on the time periods of those readings.
That is correct.
And the last step readings that we have on Paul's phone are from what time to what time?
The last step reading from Paul's phone is 8:32 to 8:42.
All right. We have one for Maggie as well, is that correct?
We do. Her last time frame is going to be 8:53 to 8:55.
And then down at the bottom, who do we have?
This is going to be Alex Murdaugh's PACE spreadsheet.
Let's talk about this a little bit. If you would, start with entry 21. And what time periods is that? This is Alex's phone, correct?
This is going to be Alex Murdaugh's phone,
Right, time period.
6:52 to 7:02,
How many steps?
approximately 283.
And how many steps per minute based on a simple math calculation?
Estimated 29.34.
All right. 22, time period, steps, and steps per minute.
7:03 to 7:11, approximately 165 steps, estimated 19.26 steps per minute.
24,
24 is going to be 7:28 to 7:37, approximately 47 steps, and estimated 5.46 steps per minute.
25,
7:41 to 7:48, showing approximately 29 steps, 3.97 steps per minute.
26,
26 is showing 7:55 to 8:05, 270 steps, approximately 28.2 steps per minute.
28,
28 is going to be the 8:05 to 8:09. It's showing approximately 74 steps. That's 17.28 steps per minute.
and as you testified, that was the last entry on Alex's phone before we get to the 9 o'clock hour. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what time was the video again?
8:44 p.m.
Let's talk about 27. What's the time period there?
Time period's going to be 9:02 to 9:06.
How many steps?
283 steps, 70.75 steps per minute estimated.
He was a busy guy right then, wasn't he?
It appears.
As you can tell, his steps increased from 9:02 because the FaceTime call was 8:44. So from 9:02 on, look at all those steps he took. So he was taking some serious steps. And if you're looking at these steps, you would think, well, he's just walking around. But look how quickly these steps are being taken. There's a lot of steps in between all that. So is he working out? What's he doing, bro? Like, honestly, what is going on, Alex? What are you doing to have all these steps from 9:02 to the end? Tell me what y'all think.
What was the average steps per minute from 9:02 to 9:06?
70.75.
And was that far in excess of any ratings on his phone in those prior entries?
According to this table, yes.
Could I have the computer back again, please? We have a map here on Paul's phone. Tell me very quickly what that represents.
We do. This is going to be based off of Verizon records for Paul Murdaugh, and it's showing 9:03:22 and 9:03:30, just showing what cell towers it was pinging off of.
Again, is his phone still locked during this time?
That is correct. Paul and Maggie's phones are still locked this time.
Bottom of page 20, we got a pink box. What does that reflect?
That's from the FBI telemetry data, just showing a system startup with the telemetry system.
On which
It's gonna be,
vehicle?
Alex Murdaugh's 2021 Suburban.
Is there a CDR reference to Mary Ann Dempsey attempting to call Paul?
There is
Mary Ann Dempsey again is who?
Rogan Gibson's girlfriend at the time.
We have two entries after that. Can you explain those entries to the jury and tell the jury what those are, please.
Yep, so at 9:03:52 to 9:04:23, Maggie Murdaugh's iPhone backlight is on. At 9:04:23, Alex Murdaugh calls Maggie Murdaugh, shows 18 seconds in his CDRs. This does not show on that Dylan Hightower first extraction or the second extraction. And it also shows missed on Maggie's phone extraction.
That one's missing from Alex's phone, correct?
That is correct. In the call log, it is missing.
At 9:05:15, is there any activity on Alex's phone?
It shows that Alex Murdaugh calls Randolph Murdaugh, 18 seconds. Does not show on Dylan Hightower extraction or the second extraction, just on the CDRs.
We have a pinkish box. What does that represent?
Pinkish box can represent that system startup for the telemetry data for the 21 Suburban.
At 9:06:12, what happens?
Between 9:06:12 and 9:06:20, Maggie Murdaugh's phone implements orientation change from portrait to orientation sideways.
That starts at 9:06:12.
Yes, and it goes to 9:06:20.
The orientation starts to change. What happens 2 seconds after that orientation starts to change?
At 9:06:14, so that's 2 seconds afterwards, the phone receives an incoming call from Alex.
Was that call on the call log when Dylan Hightower downloaded the defendant's phone?
It was not.
Nine 9:06:14 and 9:06:15. Are those referencing that missed call that showed up on Maggie's phone?
That is correct.
And 9:06:20, we're still seeing an orientation change?
Yep, that's when the orientation ended.
Moving down to the bottom of page 21, we have a bluish and a green box. Tell the jury what that is.
So according to the FBI telemetry data, the blue is going to indicate a shift in the transmission, and then green is going to show driving.
The Suburban's underway?
That is correct, according to the telemetry data.
At the bottom of page 21, is there another call from Alex Murdaugh's phone to Maggie's phone?
There is at 9:06:52, Alex calls Maggie. It shows 7 seconds long, and that's based off of CDR since it was deleted off the call history.
It wasn't on Alex's extraction, correct?
It was not.
2 missed calls?
2 missed calls.
Moving to page 22, at the top, what, if anything, does Alex Murdaugh's phone show in relation to the Suburban?
So it's just showing that, the device connected to the car. When you get in your car, your phone will pair. It's just showing a device connection to iPhone.
And then the next entry, there's a time range there. Explain that time range to the jury and what that means.
So starting at 9:07 and going till 9:44. 9:31:44. Her backlight is off.
The backlight is off.
Mhm.
That entire time period.
That entire time period. It was on, but now for this time period from 9:07 to 9:31, it's going to show off.
Going to this map, is that some of the cast data that you did, that you testified to the jury?
It is. This is a previous slide that we had up. It's showing at 9:07:06. The Suburban is leaving 4147 Moselle Road.
2 calls to Maggie. Does the Suburban just take a quick right and go down this road right there to the kennels, or does it just continue straight on?
It just continues straight on.
Doesn't stop by the kennels for a second, does it? Does it stop by the kennels?
His vehicle does not stop by the kennels.
Keeps right on going.
It's right on going to Moselle Road, makes a right.
Going down to the bottom,
Okay, guys, I guess I'm going to call it right here and do a part 3 because I have something going on that I need to go take care of. Um, but I hope you guys are understanding the cast reports a lot better based on this trial because for to be honest, I had no idea that that's exactly what went into all that. I thought a cast report was just a tower, location, speed of the vehicle, but obviously there's a lot more that goes into identifying phones, um, the car stuff that's able to track it. All the things that you've seen in this presentation, and I think this is extraordinary. I don't, it's just awesome to me to. It's scary in one point, but it's awesome in another. That we could be tracked like that, but yet at the same time, you know, is it really? I don't know. It's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. So leave in the comments what you think about this pertaining to other cases. And, is it really helping solve cases or is it creating more questions? So be sure that y'all leave some comments. Be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the presentation. I tried not to talk a lot, but you do understand that I stop and start, not because I want to interject myself in the video. Heck, if it was up to me, I'd keep the whole thing playing during the whole time. But YouTube will copyright you that way. So you have to stop the video and you have to present and give commentary. Otherwise, you get copyrighted. So that's why I stop and start, stop and start, stop and start. So you guys have a wonderful Saturday. I don't know if I'm going to be live tonight. You just never know. Tomorrow is Sunday, so definitely sometime during the day I will be doing the Sunday Serenity. If you've never attended that, please check out the merchandise. Please check out the memberships. If you haven't been gifted a membership yet, I will be doing one at the middle of the month. So probably next week sometime, I'll be giving away 5 free memberships. If there is a live going on, I will be giving those away. But be sure to try to get one of the membership because I am going to start doing a lot of members only videos that I'm not really showing the general subs, and that's not because I don't want to, but what the fact of paying for a membership if you don't get something different than the regular subs. I hope you understand that. So I have one more thing to ask you. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it? And if you can't dig it, what do I say? Get you a bigger shovel. So, Maestro, cue that music.